Welcome to Marriage IQ, the podcast for the intelligent spouse.
I'm Dr. Heidi Hastings.
And I'm Dr. Scott Hastings.
We are two doctors, two researchers, two spouses, two lovers, and two incredibly different human beings coming together for one purpose: to transform the stinky parts of your marriage into scintillating ones, using intelligence mixed with a little fun. Welcome back, you amazingly scintillating and intelligent spouses. We're really glad you're here.
Dr. Hastings, why do we have the cornerstones that we have? The 4 eyes. Why is that so important?
Well, in architectural terms, a cornerstone's the first stone to be laid in a building's foundation, to which all other stones are laid in reference. So I guess because we've decided those are the 4 things that all other parts of a good marriage are built on.
Well, wait a minute, though, Dr. Hastings. What about love? What about trust, loyalty, sacrifice?
Those are all really good.
Kindness, happiness. Why aren't those cornerstones?
That's a great question. Why don't you tell us?
Well, I think these are great qualities, right? Like people are asking, why don't we have these other things as cornerstones? They are great qualities to bring into a marital relationship. They should not be disregarded at all in our quest to establish a very firm foundation of identity, intentionality, insight, and intimacy.
Okay, true.
But they don't all start with I.
And we wanted
to keep it simple.
IQ.
Seriously.
We wanted it easy to remember.
Seriously, though, why the 4 eyes?
Tell us, please.
Well, I think I like to think about these things a lot.
You're a deep thinker.
They demand ourselves to change. They invite us to become different. And love, faithfulness, loyalty, all those other things are important, but they're also kind of subjective, I guess, right? And you can be kind to somebody without actually in your heart being kind, and the end result is not the same. We can love better if we first know who we are.
That's true.
We can trust better if we first can be intentional and gain insight on ourselves. We can sacrifice for our spouse more easily if we first know our identity and truly understand on a deeper level what intimacy is.
Okay.
So love is important. It's actually profoundly important. I kind of think of that more as maybe a capstone.
Right. I would agree. I think it comes as you do these other things at deeper levels.
Right. And so
it grows,
I think
not comes, it grows.
Yeah. And I think it's important to delineate, because you can be doing the exact same thing with 2 different frames of mind. One out of duty, resentment.
Right.
And one out of pure intention, pure love, desire. Like, isn't it nicer to do something for your spouse because you honestly actually want to do that thing?
Right, which doesn't always happen, but if we can grow towards that happening more often than not, then we're going to find more happiness and satisfaction in marriage.
So I feel really good about the 4 eyes.
I do too, but okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of pretty intense conversations over the last couple of weeks between the two of us, because we've wondered if maybe we missed an I, a really important other foundational principle. Here's the question. Would you ever lie to your spouse?
I would not like you to lie to me.
Okay, I wouldn't like you to lie to me either. So
unless you said I'm too fat, right? Or is it too ugly?
Make me look fat.
Yeah.
The answer is always
I love you.
Do you want the truth or do you want me to make you feel good? No. So some of our conversations about this have been, is integrity foundational to a good marriage? Is it like the um, is it like the underlying bedrock that then identity, intentionality, insight, and intimacy are built on, or do those come first and integrity is over the top, like the roof or like the walls, the door? I know from all of the research I've done in my doctoral program on the experiences of religious women with husbands with problematic pornography use, the underlying problem in all of these betrayal trauma cases, which for most of the women that's what it was, there wasn't integrity. So perhaps the man was really upstanding leader. A lot of my participants had husbands with really powerful positions that they held career-wise, successful, or they were leaders in churches, or even just cream of the crop good guys. And yet they were keeping these secrets about their sexual lives. That one missing element of integrity, even if they thought they knew who they were. I guess, can you understand your identity if you don't have integrity with yourself? And how does that impact your relationship? So we've talked about that a lot. What are your thoughts
Yeah,
on it?
I think that as you learn your identity and become more intentional, you develop integrity.
Okay.
And as you have integrity, you want to learn more about yourself.
And if you don't have integrity, how does that impact your identity?
Well,
Certainly, you're not. Insight may be an issue.
yeah, so you lack insight, right? Uh, if you lack integrity, but that's a hard thing to say because most people think they have integrity,
Okay.
right? In fact, I don't know of anyone who doesn't. But clearly, that's not true. That's not the case.
Those are
So
blind spots,
these
right?
these are blind spots. We love to talk about blind spots on this podcast.
Okay.
So a few scenarios. I just want to ask you,
Okay.
like, what would you do? So you found some money. You saw it. Somebody else dropped it. You have
Are you wanting me to answer these or just think
just
about
think
them?
about it.
Okay.
Just think. An attractive person of the opposite sex comes onto you in private. Nobody else around.
Okay.
You eat whatever you want when nobody is looking. But you eat right when they are, right?
Okay.
The speed limit is 45 and it's late at night and there's nobody around.
Okay.
That's a particularly hard one.
For me, yes.
You charge more than what you agreed to because nobody's paying attention. Knowing information that could help a colleague, but it may also help you advance in your career if you didn't share it with them.
Okay.
Avoid paying a bill because someone forgot to charge you for the service despite receiving it.
Hmm.
So just think on those things. There's a bunch of others. These are just some I came up with.
Okay.
Why do we lie to ourselves? These blind spots. And that goes right in with integrity.
Okay.
In a previous episode, we talked about how utterly unaware we are about ourselves and our natures. Ask 100 people if they have integrity, and all of them will tell you, of course they do. But,
Yeah, I've heard that statistic with even prison inmates.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so we see it. It's there. There's this disconnect we have with the world, and what we're trying to do is help all of us see the world objectively, how it really is, and how that can impact your relationship. So we live under this cloud of what we call the good person bias, meaning that we all think we're above average in intelligence. We are all completely loyal to our spouse, at least in the exam room that
Yeah.
everyone is loyal to their spouse,
Yes.
right? We all only eat clean food, whatever that is. We get plenty of sleep, exercise regularly. We have undeniable proof that all the things we think we do and all the things we actually do have are wildly different.
Okay.
Can we at least as people, a population, a group of people acknowledge this? You don't have to be a narcissist, you know, to be unaware of yourself.
Okay.
All of us are. So anyway, what do you have to say on integrity?
Well, I've thought a lot about this, not only during my research, but as we've talked over the last few weeks, like I said, about where does this lie? And maybe our listeners can weigh in and let us know where they think integrity lies. But I think you're probably right. I think it probably comes from identity. And if you don't have integrity, then you're maybe something is amiss with your identity, with your insight into your own personal life. It most likely is impacting your intimacy, your ability to be intimate with your spouse. But in simple terms, I think integrity really means just keeping our promises. So you've been talking some about lies that we tell ourselves, some that we tell other people, dishonest things that we do, but really down to its very core, integrity is just keeping your promises and doing what you say you'll do. This really is important both in our personal lives and in our relationships with our partners. So, are we holding ourselves accountable? When we say that we're going to be faithful to each other throughout our lives when we get married, are we truly? When we commit to fidelity, when we commit to only loving each other, when we commit to being kind and honest and faithful, are we truly doing that? Do we fulfill the promises that we make to each other? Even if it's as simple as, hey, will you pick up the dry cleaning today for me on your way home from work? Do we stay conscious of the little promises that we make to each other, the little commitments that we make with each other? So, in your opinion, what are some of the things that you think get in the way of integrity?
Well, I think that pride, you know, uh, the not listening, not being curious,
Okay.
not perspective seeking, and
Okay.
it's really hard to do. It's really hard to keep that open mind all the time. Be curious, curious, curious
Right. Right. I
with your spouse.
think a lot of times we tell ourselves lies. We tell ourselves stories that then allow us to make excuses.
The stories that we tell ourselves. Yep,
Right.
I I agree. That gets in the way of integrity.
Feeling stress, feeling painted into a corner, like we, for whatever reason, whether it's choices that we've made, addictions, whether it's committing to things beyond what we can control. I think those are some things that get in the way of integrity. Blaming the other person.
Yeah, and that's something that I have to take on. Is never. It's not. It starts with me.
Right.
It starts with me, not you,
Right.
not your fault. It's not your fault. That's not how I'm going to grow at all.
Right. So there's actually a study by Dr. Shalom Levitt that found that couples who are more satisfied in their marriages are more likely to have the core values of integrity and fidelity. So when we go back to identity and knowing who we are those part of your core values? And if so, are there some things you need to do to remind yourself that integrity and fidelity are part of who you are? So those couples that have the core values of integrity and fidelity, they found in their study, are frequently tied to deeply held religious beliefs. And they've found that religion actually influences marital integrity. And it does that through lifestyle, through beliefs, through commitment to a higher power. In her study, Dr. Levitt also found that challenges to maintain integrity and fidelity in marriage showed up and were really complex. But while several of the people talked about how religion helped with that, there were some that religion actually caused frustration. I remember one, so hers was interviews done with, I want to say, a couple of hundred couples. And when one man left the religion that they had agreed upon in the beginning, that they both entered the marriage with, he expressed really some great frustration that his wife really struggled to continue to have that same level of fidelity with him at that point. And so it's complex. It's not easy. You know, she was so disturbed by his change in religious beliefs that she had a hard time connecting deeply with him, and she didn't want to talk about it. He felt disconnected. He felt that that was a source of not having integrity, not
So,
remaining in that same level of fidelity because of that change.
okay, Dr. Hastings, let me ask you this. Does this mean that intelligent spouses must believe in God?
No, not necessarily.
Does that mean,
But
I
this
mean, you need
study
to
found
attend
that.
a religion? I guess most religions believe in God. I guess maybe not all of them, but most do.
Well,
Are you saying that that's part of having an intelligent marriage?
I think it doesn't need to be necessarily. It is part of ours, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be. But what I think is at the core of integrity is having some sort of a moral compass. And I think what the people in her study were saying is that was the religious messaging that they received in terms of marriage, especially, and fidelity, was supported and sometimes taught through religion.
Because
So
I can give you several examples of very religious people who have zero integrity
that
and they
is
have
true.
terrible marriages.
That is true. That is true. Absolutely. So it's not a guarantee.
Yeah. So, but I think the point though is in this study that she found that perhaps just having a higher power, whatever that is,
Right.
right?
Right.
To say, look, I'm not doing it all on my own. There's got to be some higher power.
And using that higher power or religious beliefs or moral stance, moral compasses to find common ground and to say, this is what we're going to be integrous to. This is where our integrity is going to lie. And it doesn't have to be the same for every couple. It's that you can define together what might include living a life of integrity.
All right. Well, let's take a little bit. We talk about integrity, but part of integrity is really being honest, right?
Okay.
And it starts with being honest with myself. Okay. Can I just be honest for a moment here?
As long as you don't tell me I'm fat.
I didn't know this until literally this past year. But research, deep diving research from multiple perspectives, and it's hard to find this data because a lot of people don't want to talk about it or want to think about it. But research from multiple perspectives show that just about 100% of men consume porn in one way or another. It might be daily, weekly, monthly, annually, whatever that is.
Or have done in the past. Have
Or
had
in,
a history
or in the
with it.
past. Like, look, it's part of that Y chromosome, okay? It's part of what's genetically kind of put into our DNA.
But not an excuse.
But it's not an excuse. It's an explanation, but not an excuse. So having said that, so about 65% of men have consumed it within the past month. So with that backdrop in mind, I don't feel so bad about having to say this because it's really hard for me. I've struggled with it as well in the past. I'd say it's largely out of my life now. Yeah, but yeah, I struggled with it off and on, especially since uh, medical residency. When I finished medical school, and you're up all night, we're up all hours of the night. We have to be awake to be available for these emergencies.
Mhm.
And, I always hated it afterward.
Mm.
But years of being honest with myself and my spouse, I was able to disclose each time that happened. So yeah, it sucks. It sucks for me. It sucks for her. So why did I do it? Why was I honest? Why didn't I just keep this little secret for the rest of my life and avoid the pain and anguish? That just makes the most sense, right?
Well, 20 years later, I'm very glad that you made that decision because it's made all the difference. So you tell me, why do you think you made that
Well,
decision to?
part of it is you always say it's far worse for me not to tell you than for me to actually do it. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. That transparency, and it's hard. And I invite the intelligent spouse out there listening, if they have an issue with pornography, to take a chance to speak with their spouse about it in a way that's um, not.
That's a loaded and complicated
Yeah,
challenge.
it
And
is,
I
and it's probably
think
for
we
another
probably need to
podcast.
do another podcast giving more specific information on how to do that. But let's just for sure tie this is part of integrity and we want you to start thinking about it. We'll do another podcast because if you just go out there and just blab it and you've been involved with it for 20 years or something,
It might be a big
it could
problem.
blow up. It could blow up. So
So,
let's prepare them.
all right.
But keep in mind that this is something that we're going to talk further about. So fidelity is a part of integrity that really, the two are iterative. They're closely aligned. And fidelity within marriage typically encompasses both physical and emotional commitment and dedication to our partners. Physical fidelity implies that we're being sexually exclusive to a spouse, while emotional fidelity involves being committed to the emotional well being of the partner and maintaining that deep emotional connection only with them. So, both aspects are important for building trust and intimacy and a strong foundation for a lasting relationship. Fidelity is really often seen as a cornerstone of a healthy and successful marriage. It's not one of our five, but it's built upon those foundational cornerstones that we have, those four I's, because it fosters mutual respect and loyalty and security between partners. And you're right, a lot of spouses and those who are viewing porn would consider that to be a breach of fidelity.
The other side of honesty is
Deception.
deception.
Yeah.
And we like to say secrets.
I think secrets come before deception. I think deception starts with secrets. So go ahead.
According to divorce.com, keeping secrets about things like finances, friendships, infidelity, addictions, and more in marriage can cause serious relationship issues. If you find yourself hiding things from your partner, think about why you're doing it and
Right.
what might happen as a result. Open communication is essential for a healthy relationship.
Right.
So secrecy involves purposefully withholding certain information, typically because it's embarrassing, shameful, or feared to harm relationships or your reputation.
Right. Going back to that porn example, in the studies that I've done, a lot of the men were afraid their wife would leave them if they told them, or they just felt so much shame about it that they kept hiding it. All of those things, embarrassment, shame, and fear, or that they don't have the language to speak about it. I've seen a lot of research on that secrets often stem from the inability to know how to talk about it.
So talk about Dr. Hastings, there's a study about sharing personal vulnerabilities. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, there's a new study just a couple of months ago out by Davis and Tabri that found that sharing personal vulnerabilities and weaknesses in a relationship can strengthen trust and emotional closeness. But contrary to that, on the other hand, choosing not to disclose such things can suggest a lack of confidence in your partner's abilities to support you through that. It also might show lesser commitment to striving for that deeper relationship. So if I keep a secret, often it's that I'm upset in the relationship, I'm unfulfilled in the relationship, I don't trust my partner to support me, or I'm just not that invested. So keeping secrets might indicate that there are underlying issues with the relationship to start with that can breed resentment and compromise trust. John Gottman and his wife Julie proposed that at the core of secret keeping within romantic relationships is the inability to resolve conflict peacefully and without a flood of emotion. So what that might look like is, say, a guy has an issue with porn and he tries to tell his wife about it and she becomes emotionally flooded. She either bottles up and won't speak about it ever again. She says, "You do that again and I'm going to divorce you." She becomes just very emotionally unstable. That is one of the reasons why they just the inability to resolve conflict, to sit in discomfort and move through those conflictual situations. Just they're like, I'm just not going to talk about it anymore if this is what it does to her. But we really are going to encourage you to get beyond keeping secrets for that reason.
But Dr. Hastings, I don't want to hurt my spouse or my colleague or my dad or someone else special in my life.
Right.
I don't, shouldn't you have some level of discretion? Like read the room. What about confidentiality? As a physician, I'm required to keep things confidential.
Right.
So it gets really tricky here,
It
right?
does. It does get tricky. And if you're saying I spent $100 on a purse and I'm hiding that from my spouse because I'm afraid that he's going to blow up at me, the long-term impact of that is going to be different than hiding an addiction or a compulsion, compulsive behavior, compulsive sexual behavior, or hiding friends
So
that may turn into relationships that could compromise the marriage.
So what I hear you saying is that it's much worse down the road by keeping these secrets than the upfront trauma that you get by sharing.
That's true. That is true. But with that, if we're truly moving towards being a person of integrity, then we need to be able to sit in discomfort and talk about things that are difficult. We need to really work on doing that in a way that's safe. And we'll have a couple of episodes that will give some suggestions on that. Our episode coming up on couples counsel will have a little bit of information on that and some other communication episodes that we're going to do in the future. But ultimately, what, as a couple, does integrity look like to you? And if you're violating what your partner sees as having a life of integrity, living a life of integrity and fidelity to each other, then you've got to figure out how to disclose, even if it's hurtful. And probably the best thing to do is to stop doing things that are hurtful to your
And
spouse.
for those intelligent spouses out there who just are saying, look, no, I don't believe them, they're wrong. The research is not going to be on your side here. The research is going to agree with Dr. Hastings. In the journal Scientific American, we find that at least 97% of us have a secret that we don't want anyone else to know about. That's pretty high.
That
Wow.
is really high.
We find from the work of Asclepius, Chun, and Mason that mental pain and anguish arising from keeping secrets creates a lower sense of well-being, happiness, and joy.
So what they're saying then is not only is it hurtful to the spouse, but it's very hurtful to the secret keeper.
And it's for reasons that are different than you might think.
Okay.
Most people, when asked, think, well, it's the difficulty of trying to keep the secret a secret,
Okay.
trying to make sure everything's hidden all the time. But in reality, that's not what they found.
What did they
They
find?
found that the biggest issue with well-being had to deal with having to think about it all the time. Always thinking. Not how they're going to keep their spouse from knowing, but just actually thinking about it.
What's it? Thinking about the thing
The
that they
secret
did
itself.
that was not a decision of integrity.
So the bottom line is we feel miserable not because we got away with it
Okay.
as much as we feel miserable because it's constantly coming back into our mind about what that secret is. And it wears on us. And we have scientific evidence from multiple lines of evidence that keeping secrets is not a long-term solution for healthy mental health.
Okay. So if we're going to go back to the porn issue with that, I will tell you the women in my study disclosed that their husbands had, without me ever asking a question about it, their husbands had terrible mental health. They had really significant depression, struggled with, one woman was telling that her husband was curled up on a ball on the floor, unable to go to work and do things. Part of that, perhaps, was the dissonance between behavior of viewing porn and their beliefs in being a good, righteous person or a good moral person. But what you're saying is the other part of that, which I hadn't really thought about in my research, but which could be, is that they were so plagued with constantly thinking about the things they were doing wrong because they had to keep it a secret, that's what actually is impacting their mental health.
That's correct.
Wow. That's insightful.
Yeah, there's no other way around it. Research also shows vulnerability is hard. Vulnerable, meaning being open. So it's scary. It's
is.
ultimately freeing. If you find yourself struggling how to be vulnerable, don't worry. The vast majority of us do too. Never fear, though, dear loyal, intelligent spouse of the Marriage IQ podcast. The doctors Hastings will guide you oh so eloquently and so meticulously through these strange new corridors of life.
All right. Well, we do want to have you start thinking this week about living lives of integrity, because research ultimately shows that is what helps create strong, stable, committed relationships. Research also shows that if there are a lot of areas of conflict in our lives and individuals feel like their needs aren't being met, they begin to vilify their spouse. They make their spouse the enemy, and they're constantly looking for things that their spouse does wrong. They're being very critical. And so they have to have someone that will validate the things that they're saying. So often it's somebody at work. It might be a mother, a girlfriend, saying, yeah, he's such a jerk when he does this, or yeah, he's too married to his job, or yeah, he does whatever it is. They find someone who will be their ally, and then that person starts to meet their needs. They start crossing little boundaries at first because they viewed their partner as the enemy, but then the deceit continues. And so making those little concessions for either secrets, lies we tell ourselves, joining with an ally to validate the stories that we're telling ourselves, can really enhance those times within our relationship that we're not living with integrity and ultimately cause a lot of destruction to the relationship.
So let's this week reflect on the promises you made to yourself and to your spouse. Identify where you might have fallen short in those commitments.
Yeah.
Take responsibility for these lapses and commit to improving. Don't blame your spouse.
Right.
Hold yourself accountable.
Right.
So let's do that for this
Decide
next
to
week.
do better. Hold yourself accountable. Oh, for next week.
For next week, what is the big O? We're going to talk about it. Thanks for listening.
See you next time. So if you like this podcast, we want to ask for your help with just 3 little things. Rate it, review it, and share it. We really are so grateful that you joined us today, and we look forward to having you join us next time on Marriage IQ.